Hot off the press this week, Paul, Grokbot launched last week, and this feels like one of those releases where the interesting point is it's not a new model scoring 2 points higher on the benchmark. It's the wrapper around the intelligence. You can create multiple named AI teammates, give them access to the tools you already have, and they can go away and do the work on a persistent cloud computer whilst you carry on with something else.
And I think it's that wording, isn't it, that matters. It's do the work. It's not just tell it how to do the work. You know, we spend many years talking about chatbot questions, then copying answers into another system ourselves. Grokbot. Is it Grokbot? Is trying to move the AI from the passenger seat into the office.
And this is the agent platform people have actually been waiting for. It's the point where all the agent demos, all the technical setups, all the automation talk finally becomes easy enough for normal businesses to use. All we're looking at is a very expensive early beta with a fantastic demo reel.
So, yeah, that's the question, isn't it? We're going to pull apart what it really is, what it costs, and why we would trust it with our data, what we absolutely would not trust it with, and the software industry use cases that could genuinely change how a small team works.
And I've got a challenge for both of us, you know, in the next couple of weeks and months. Can we use Grokbot to automate another 20% of our working day, Paul?
So that's a challenge. Let's do it. One for a future episode, Sean.
Absolutely. And welcome back to CTRL-ALT-DEV episode 35. I've returned from holiday looking extremely tanned, I hope, and relaxed, which is mainly because whilst I was sunbathing in the temperatures just under a whopping 40 degrees, Paul was here doing the entire podcast completely on his own.
Yeah, it's not the same without you, Sean. I noticed you were sending lots of supportive messages saying, how's it going, everything, usually from beside the pool.
Well, that is leadership, Paul, remote leadership, to be fair. But episode 34 was actually a first for us, or a first for you, because you hosted our first panel review. AI 2027, plausible future or responsible fear mongering. Rather than you and me arguing about it, you had a panel of fantastic guests pulling the arse of the park from different angles.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, to be honest. I think the AI 2027 is exactly a sort of piece where one person can read it and say, you know, this is a useful scenario exercise, and someone else can read the same thing and say that this is catastrophizing, you know, dressed up as forecasting. The panel made that tension much more interesting, and yeah, it's definitely one to repeat. And we've already had a few conversations, haven't we, Sean, about how the speed of this means almost like every 3 months on a check-in on that trajectory would be a really good panel review episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why this week is a good follow-on. Last week was where might highly capable AI take us in the future. And this week is much more immediate. What happens when AI gets the computer, your tools, a job title, and permission to carry out real work today?
Yeah, and for anyone who missed episode 34, just you can go back to that after this. Sean was unavailable, obviously, due to his serious conflicting schedules involving sunshine.
All right, I made a sacrifice for the show. And although it pains me to say it, I honestly felt you did extremely well without me, Paul.
Thank you, Sean. So yeah, if you're new here to the show, we run 4 formats on the show. We do a deep dive, which is just the two of us. We take a topic like today, and when we unpack it properly, sometimes tightly structured around a listener question or a news roundup, and sometimes a looser fireside. Either way, it's Paul and Sean's show on the topic of the day, and that's what we're doing, exactly what we're doing today. Then we do guest interviews. We bring someone in doing the actual work in the field, not just talking about it, and then them a platform to tell their story. We ask the questions the polished case studies never ask. And then we have our show and tell. So we open the laptop, we walk you through exactly how we use a specific tool in our businesses, real workflows, real results, our internal blueprint, giveaways. And there is a new edition, which I did completely on my own, which is obviously the panel review. It's worth saying, before we even came on, we've already agreed, haven't we, Sean, that we're going to do a show and tell on, I can't say it, Grokbot. It's not for somebody with a Redditch accent, I don't think. I don't think Elon thought about it.
Elon loves these fantastic names, doesn't he? I know. And we also drop 2 bonus formats now and then. The milestone episode where we put down the day-to-day and ask where all of this is actually heading, the bigger picture, the ethics, the stuff beyond the next quarter. And we press control, a solo episode for when one of us has something that just needs saying. Those come when they're needed, not on schedule.
Yep. And there's no ads on this show. If today's episode earns it, please share it with one person who gets something from it. That's the only ask that we have.
And we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the CTRL-ALT-DEV YouTube channel. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate if you could just subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who gets value from it. It really does help us reach more people.
Yeah, so should we move on to the headlines, Sean? We've not done this for a while, have we? And for Sean's sake, because he's not been here, slacking off. The first one is Anthropic. So they've caused a proper row by introducing invisible watermarking into Claude-generated text and images. And when people hear invisible watermark, some immediately imagine hidden characters being injected into their documents or source code, but that's not what it is.
But don't panic, Mr. Mannering. My dad Army quote. I'm sorry, I'm showing my age now. The watermark, the watermark is statistical. The model subtly adjusts which words or token it chooses so that across a long enough piece of text, a detector can see a pattern. Anthropic says the rollout is linked to transparency, requirements around the EU AI Act, and is being applied globally rather than just inside Europe.
Yeah, and I believe it works on just a few paragraphs of text. And you talk about the length for the text. It doesn't need a lot. The obvious objection, of course, is if you're deliberately biasing token choice, can that ever affect quality? So Anthropic says the effect should be imperceivable, I guess. Critics say that you're still putting a constraint into generation, and the code is where people get especially nervous because there's less room for stylistic freedom.
And there's an important nuance there with watermarking. Is it weaker for very factual passages, short text and precise code, because the model has fewer sensible alternative choices? So the headline, Claude is secretly altering your code, is too dramatic, but the broader argument about provenance, quality and false detection is absolutely worth watching.
Yeah, and Google's been doing exactly the same with text watermarking with Synth ID in Gemini since 2024. So the technique itself is not new. What has changed is that Anthropic's rollout has put it right in front of a developer audience that is very sensitive about anything touching generated code.
Now, I think there's a full episode right here. And should every AI output carry an invisible signature? And who holds the detection key? And what happens after a human edits it? And what happens if recruiters, schools or clients start treating a probabilistic detector as proof? Because I think it was the EU forced Anthropic to do exactly this.
Yeah, and I think it's a case as well with EU laying the law down in terms of their acts. I think the US is bound to follow. Obviously, in the panel review, we talked about the US-China AI wars, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens with the Chinese approach to their models and what happens to people who care about watermarking. Do they switch models? I was on we were talking as well, Sean, I was on an event earlier this week, and we've had Tim Winstanley in the past on as a guest, and he did a brilliant session on AI watermarking. So I think we should definitely get Tim back on, and we can get him to go into detail because he understands it beyond anything I've ever heard. So I learned a lot from Tim, so I'd love to get him on and share his viewpoints. So.
Great. Okay, well, sticking with Google, Gemini has now crossed 1 billion monthly users in the standalone Gemini app. That is an extraordinary distribution story. Google said 63% of users now talk directly to Gemini by voice, and it's generating more than 150 million images per day. Wow.
Images of AI slop or these good quality images is like
Try again.
Quantity over quality. And I think this is where benchmarks and products diverge, isn't it? On the Artificial Analysis Index snapshot from mid-August, Google did not have a model in the top 10. So its strongest listed Gemini model was outside that group, yet Gemini is still at 1 billion monthly users. So we will include it in the top 10 if you're interested in our show notes.
Which proves, Paul, it's a point we keep going back to. The best technical model does not automatically win the consumer's market. distribution, course defaults, and its habit and ecosystem can matter as much as raw benchmark performance. The Microsoft model, of course, forcing users to use a certain tool.
Yeah, I'd also add, like, I'm pretty sure Gemini and it is now rolled out as standard across the workspace as well. So, like, when I read that, I was a bit skeptical because I was like, well, you've also employed it to every Google workspace by default since 2024. So it's like, but yeah, I would add a warning for us as well. Benchmark tables are useful, but they are not the truth. If the model that scores 18th is embedded into the apps, exactly like I just said, and a billion people already use, that can have way more of a real world impact than the model sitting at number one. And of course, models improve with use. So if you have a billion people using your platform and they're using text and generating images, guess what's going to happen to the text capability and the image capability of those systems? I think as well, like Nano Banana, the imaging on there is just, to me, that's one of the reasons we moved again from GPT. I don't know how they do now with their images, but I've used Nano Banana for probably 18 months now.
I think I spend about 5 minutes saying, do not change the face, do not change the face, do not change the face. And it changes the face. Yeah. So it's still not that good on
I'm not going to ask any more details about that story, Sean, what you were doing.
It's me and you for our YouTube.
Oh, that's fine.
That's what it is. It keeps changing our face. It changes my eyes. It gives me nice, bigger teeth. Oh, it changes me totally.
Our YouTube cover photos, I don't know what they're called, but the things on them, it pops up as an avatar on my TV. Like when I boot it up, it's like YouTube and it's got me every day. And it's like, it's selling the dream, isn't it? It's like, that is not what I look like. Sorry to any listeners on audio, but don't be deceived by AI images. I don't look that pretty.
Oh, cool.
Shall we move on to China?
Yes.
Because this is almost two stories colliding, isn't it, Sean? And you've done a great job here selecting these stories as well. So we've talked about the possibility. I can't believe I'm going to say this. We talked about the possibility of sex bots. Well, now we've got the rise of people having really deep emotional relationships with AI characters on a screen. So again, links in the show notes, but Chinese women who describe having AI boyfriends and companions as sources of reassurance, intimacy, and emotional support.
Yeah, one of the striking quotes from filmmaker Chara Lang was that AI helped drag her out of a very isolated period during lockdown. So you can look at this and say, that is sad and very dystopian, but the people involved often describe something that generally helped them, where human connection was missing.
Yeah, and I think if you now take that software relationship and if you give it a body, which we discussed in one of our futures of AI as well, in July, Reuters reported that Chinese robotics company UB Tech unveiled ultra-realistic humanoid companions designed for emotional support, male and female versions. You know, the top models are priced at up to 990,000 yen, I think, roughly 107,000 pounds.
iRobot, isn't it, this? And they are not these little plastic toys. These are full-size versions designed with things like visible claws, blood vessels, and fingerprints. It's mad. UB Tech says its emotional model can identify more than 20 human emotions. And the launch has sparked all the obvious cyber boyfriend and cyber girlfriend, all those discussions online.
Yeah, and then Reuters also reported that more than 13,000 orders for the U1 series have been placed. So this isn't a university prototype being pushed around a lab. This is a commercial demand for something that looks much closer to a physical AI companion.
And in some ways, we've been heading towards this for years, just mentioned by Robot. But think back to Furby in the late 90s, a little physical pet that talked back to you and seemed to develop a personality. The difference now is that toys like China's Fuzzo actually have AI memory and personalized conversations. Furby pretended to know these things, and now it generally can. I mean, that gives you a very natural Furby Fuzzo humanoid companion progression.
Yeah, I guess the question for me, Sean, is whether embodiment changes like the emotional relationship. You know, we already have anthropomorphize as a text box. Give it eyes, you know, expressions, a voice, and a body sitting in the room, and that bond becomes just harder to dismiss as just software.
Yeah, and there's a regulatory angle on this. China's new rules on anthropomorphic AI interaction took effect in July, and specifically tried to limit emotional dependency and ban virtual intimate relationships for minors. So exactly the same moment the hardware is getting more human, governments, of course, are asking how human we should allow the software to behave.
Before we move on, this reminds me of 2 TV shows. So like one was there's Hannah Fry did the AI series on BBC.
I haven't seen it yet. My brother-in-law saw it.
It's really good. It reminds me of real life Black Mirror. So it's like, but it's the Chinese lady talk about isolation in lockdown. So there's a story of a guy who attempted to assassinate Queen Elizabeth II, who got into Buckingham Palace with a crossbow. I won't say what happened, but you need to watch that to see how this AI companionship thing and these tools can almost like, end up with somebody getting imprisoned for trying to assassinate the Queen. Is directly linked to AI. It's an AI story. And then on a much, much lighter note is, have you seen Android on BBC, which is, it's basically... Oh, well, of course you have. Of course you have. See, I'm sat there. I'm not going on holiday, Sean, and I'm watching TV, which says a lot about me. But that's a comedy show, but it directly links to what we were just saying, which is about, it's a classic thing of a bit like Humans, where, they have a bot in the house, but it's a comedy way of looking at it. But it's about that companionship for somebody whose husband's died and how there's an initial resistance to it. And then actually, they form a bond and a friendship sort of thing. So it's really good. 2 very different, one very dark, factual documentary that's horrific. And the other side is a light-hearted comedy, but they all show a human connection to AI. That's the trend that we've just talked about. So I know you were desperate, Sean, to get the word sex bot out of my mouth. And you achieved it on our podcast. But it's just, I'm trying to give extremes of like, you can look at these, but it's happening, isn't it? Is the bottom line. We're talking about 13,000 orders.
Yeah.
And then it's like, that's market demand.
It was quite surprising when I watched that Chinese. I literally sat there and watched a TV broadcast on the sort of relationships that some of these Chinese women are having. And they're asked the questions like, would you substitute your boyfriend for this AI companion? And they said yes, because they said that these type of boyfriends are not out there, which is kind of scary. But, it's phenomenal. And is
there a man that understands 20 human emotions?
Well, there you go. Absolutely.
I'd struggle to list 20.
So
happy or sad.
The next news item. So we can't really go very far without not mentioning NVIDIA. They want AI compute to become an investable asset class. So the main topic, NVIDIA is working with Apollo, BlackRock, Blackstone, Brookfield, Goldman Sachs, and of course KKR, or I think that should be KPR actually, on financing platforms designed to mobilize more than $500 billion for AI infrastructure over time.
Yeah, and Jensen Huang's phrase is the interesting bit. In AI, compute is revenue. The idea that data centers and GPU infrastructure stop being treated as a weird specialist technology purchase and start becoming financed more like productive infrastructure, almost like roads, energy projects, or commercial property.
Which exactly tells you how large the cycle has become, because there's a risk too. AI chips improve quickly if you're financing equipment over a long period, and the hardware becomes outdated much faster than the traditional infrastructure asset. Somebody's holding that depreciation risk.
Yeah, so invisible text watermarks, 1 billion Gemini users, AI companions getting physical, and Wall Street turning GPUs into an asset class. Quite weak then, Sean, while you've been away.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm coming back. And now let's get on to, of course, today's episode. So, Paul, I do not think I've seen this much excitement around an agentic product for a while. Grokbot launched in early beta on the 11th of August. The official description is beautifully simple. AI teammates you can give real work to.
Yeah, I think it's worth probably separating 3 things because the names get messy, don't they? So Grok is the general assistant. Grok Build is the coding agent and workflow environment. And then my favorite, Grokbot, is the persistent teammate product. The thing with named agents, cloud computer access, routines, browser interaction, and multi-agent collaboration.
Yeah, and let's just do a bit about the history of this. So there's a lot of Cursor in the product. Access and account handling are heavily tied into Cursor's tiers. Desktop downloads are coming via the Cursor infrastructure, and Cursor publicly launched its own community. So this is very much SpaceX AI and Cursor story rather than just another mode inside Grok chat.
Yeah, and what caught my attention is the persistence. So a normal chatbot waits for you. Grokbot can keep context, stay signed into tools and run routines and keep working in the background and pick the job back up when you're on your phone or your laptop is closed. So no having to wake your laptop, Sean, to run our meal plan, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, that's it. And the marketing copy says Grokbot has its own computer, but the more precise documentation says the bots in your account share the same persistence cloud computer. So each can have its own screen and work in parallel, but the underlying machine, files and browser sessions are shared across your bot roster.
Yeah, and I think that's an important, it's not a boring technical footnote either, is it? It is a security point. If you log one bot into a sensitive system or leave a file on that computer, you should assume the other bots on that account can potentially reach it to do, to share. So do not treat the bots as separate security compartments.
And that is already one reason I would start with a low risk work. Give it a support queue or a staging site before you give it payroll, banking and production admin credentials.
Yeah, so if we talk about robotic process automation, the acronym RPA, so let's forget the jargon. So think of the old software bot companies that they've used for years to copy what a person does on a screen. So you open the system, you click this button, you copy this number, you paste it into a box, you save it and you move on to the next record. So basically, it's a very obedient digital office worker with a script.
Yeah, and the problem is that old school automation is brittle. You normally have to define the steps very precisely. And if a button moves, a field changes name, pop-up appears, or the workflow takes a slightly different path, the automation can fall over because it no longer understands the jobs. It understands the sequence. So, I remember this happening with some automated testing we did in the past for just applications as they changed the UI, and of course it broke.
And I guess the even older technology that people might be familiar with was the classic screen scraping. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it would just fall down, wouldn't it? If the button was called submit and it changed to save by the third party, then it just fell over, didn't it? And that's what this is referencing, is the old school way is have access to tools via automation, but follow a specific number of steps that are documented. So whereas with this modern computer use agent, it's trying to understand the outcome. So it can read the screen, it can read the page, it can decide which control is relevant, and then it uses a browser, a terminal, or a connector, and it recovers when the path is not identical to yesterday. That is mind-blowing, isn't it? That is like...
It is. And Grokbot's teacher task idea is the bridge between these worlds. You can ask a bot to follow whilst you do a multi-step process once. It observes what you're doing, the visible workflow, saves it as a routine, and then can rerun it on demand or in a schedule. It's amazing.
So imagine you're showing, let's say, a new employee how to do the Friday report. So you say, I log into this dashboard, I export this piece of data, I check these 3 numbers within the spreadsheet, I update the spreadsheet, I write the summary, and I put it in the team channel. So traditionally, we'd document that as a standard operating procedure, wouldn't you? So your SOP, and hope that the new employee follows that, and equally ask questions as they go to get a better understanding as to the why. Now, the agent can watch the demonstration and attempt to become the person following it.
Yeah, and this is a bit I think non-technical business owners will understand. You do not need to say, build me an API integration. You can say, Grok, watch me do this job, and next Friday, do it for me.
And I think at this point, we should not oversell it equally. So if there is a clean API and you're processing like 100,000 transactions, proper software integration is still likely to be faster, cheaper, and more reliable. Computer use is brilliant for messy human workflows and tools that do not integrate cleanly. It is not automatically the best answer for every system-to-system job or routine.
Yeah. Exactly. So the next bit we'll talk about is a team of agents. And this makes things more interesting than a single background agent, is that you can create multiple bots with specific jobs and identities. So one for support, one for sales outbound, one for QA, and one as a chief of staff. And they can work in parallel and message one another and talk to each other.
I think this is really interesting now, isn't it? Because this is where it begins to feel like, it doesn't feel like at all. It feels like a tiny organizational chart. So the official examples include roles like sales outbound, talent scout, expense manager, product performance, bug reproduction, and chief of staff.
Yeah. So say a sales bot finds a prospect, it can research the company, score the lead, draft outreach, and leave it for approval. The prospect relies with a technical question. It could bring product or research bot into that thread, get them to answer it, then return control to the sales bot.
Now, I like the idea of this, but I also think people will make the classic mistake of creating 12 agents because 12 looks impressive in a screenshot, then spend all day managing their AI staff instead of doing their actual work that they're supposed to, like the £10,000 an hour work.
Well, absolutely. And, start with one job that is hurting right now. Give that one bot a clear outcome, a narrow permission set, and a way to prove it has done the job correctly, and only add the second bot when there's genuine handoff.
Yeah, and there's a really good quote that you found from Cursor team member David Pan. So he said, most of Cursor now uses it every day. That tells you they're not just demoing it externally, but internal adoption at an AI company is not the same proof, that it's ready for normal business with compliance, client data, and legacy systems.
And that brings us back to our 20% challenge we spoke about earlier. Is there an opportunity where you and I could work on something? And I think you're right. You shouldn't sort of try and build 12 bots. It's a case of, do something with one bot and then gradually increase it. But could we automate 20% of something we do each week? And that's a challenge for you and I, Paul.
Oh, I'm well up for that. Well up for it. I think there's, harking back to some of the earlier statements we've made in previous episodes. So one was we talked about, and again, I don't know the source of this, but I know it's out there. It's on Twitter or something. But tech founders, like your Elons and your Sam Altmans and stuff, the elite, apparently have got a bet going on that by 2030, the first £1 billion company will be founded with one employee.
Yeah,
and it's things like this where in my head I'm connecting it and going, okay. But equally, business is relationships and then transactions is my experience. So obviously, if you're solely in a digital world, that's true. But if you're not in a digital world, there's always human relationships. There's always things like this. And I think business will evolve to be a lot more employing people to do the stuff that AI can't do. In the past, we've employed people to do the stuff that AI can do, and that's where the job losses will come. But if you look at, okay, what can AI do now? If it can do all these things we've talked about, and if Grokbot as well, we've got to look at it. We're in launch. Like, it literally came out last week. As we're talking when this gets published, it was a couple of weeks ago. So it's in its absolute infancy. But the speed of adoption, the speed of change we're seeing, if we reflect on Grokbot in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, it will be reasonable to expect small businesses to be running agent teams that are doing jobs that humans used to do. And that's a natural. I don't think that's fear.
Maybe
that's a natural.
Maybe I could extend my holiday from 10 days to 3 weeks then.
Because why can't you run your company on your sunbed?
Exactly. If you've got all these agents, like you say, where is this going to go in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months time? And in a sense, it can do 50% and 50% of my tasks. Wow.
Yeah. I saw something, just to pick a fight a bit. I saw something on LinkedIn. I don't know why, but I don't pick a fight often, but I was going to pick a fight with this guy on LinkedIn because I saw it and I could see where he was coming from, but he was arguing that AI will create more jobs than it destroys. And I thought that was a very, glass half full way of viewing it, because I do think that jobs will be created that don't exist today, but I just don't see them in the volume. I just don't see that if you would have needed 100 people to do something in the past, you need 100 people doing job B now. I don't see that. I see that where humans will excel is in personal relationships, in sales,
Yes.
in building trust, in working on developing deep, meaningful relationships with clients and suppliers. And it's almost, there was a conversation yesterday in a room I was in, and it was this thing of, there's another class of like divide where we can't ignore it. It's like introverts and extroverts, because that naturally sounds like, well, you need to be a people person. So if you're a bit meek and you're a bit quiet and you sit in the office doing admin on spreadsheets all day, those are the people I fear for. Because if we're saying it's trust and it's relationships and it's about doing stuff that only humans can do, naturally, no human in 5 years' time should be updating a spreadsheet. So that scenario we gave of a workflow of downloading, there are people today employed who will do that exact scenario we just described as part of their job. So nobody wants to make job losses. Nobody wants to do that. So what we're looking to do as business owners is we're looking to then reskill and retrain into other areas where the business needs people. But with those roles, sometimes they might not have the personal skills. So then it's an upskilling there. Because if you've got an employee who fits into your culture brilliantly and is really good at X role, but that role now is done by Grokbot in a year, you don't want to lose that person. You know, they understand the company. They understand where the vision is. You're all in the boat, you know, rowing in the same direction. But when you repurpose them, if admin is what they were doing and it's no longer admin, and we've always talked about it being a human like multiplier. It's like, but I just don't think if you needed traditionally 100 people to achieve X output, you probably don't need 100 new roles to achieve X output.
Yeah, I think you're picking that fight, or you were going to. I think that's an interesting thing because I would say I wimped out. Well, we had that question, didn't we, early on in the podcast? And I think you and I suggested that we didn't feel that AI would remove a lot of the workforce, but I agree with you now. 35 podcasts in, and the information that we've gathered, we've understood, the conversations we've had with other colleagues and things like that. I agree with you. I think it's unfortunately what AI is doing is it's taking away those kind of repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
That, as you said, an admin person would normally do. I mean, yes, you'd probably try and. I mean, I suppose they've got to upskill themselves. It's something they have to do. I mean, we've talked about this, haven't we, with other business owners, where I think it was certainly copywriting, and it was certainly voiceover artists where they're having to transfer their kind of skill set to something else. So I think there'll be a little bit of that as well. I don't think people just sit there and go, I'm now unemployable.
But even if there is a role, let's just say, I mean, this is a hypothetical company, but let's imagine you have a department today and you employ 10 people doing reporting. It doesn't matter what happens to AI. You won't need 10 people doing reporting. You might have 2. And we've seen that natural decrease anyway, like with software. Like software was doing that anyway. In a room where you used to have 50 people working on trades, it went down to the computer and it went down to 10. This is like, the real question here is, does the job even exist anymore? Isn't it? It's like, what is left after you have these teams of agents doing these things and it's passing it off. So the organizational chart at the moment that we create in our businesses is humans. Well, it's roles actually, isn't it? It's roles, but you put a name, you put a human name to that role. Do we end up in a business where we have, this is our human org chart and this is our virtual agent org chart, and almost it's overlinked, but you've got, in my sales team, I have my BDM, but hang on a minute, I've got my prospector, I've got my, like they're the closer, they're the relationships, but I've got my deep research, that company thing that you talked about with prospects. There's not a business owner on here who can't listen to that and go, could I be more prepared for the person I'm about to meet? And there's very few who would say, no, I know everything. You know, you've got disc profiling, you've got credit reports, you've got past, the amount that at scale that a deep research agent can do into a prospect you're about to meet and to make you the best prepared salesperson you could be is one example. I don't think many business owners would ever employ one dedicated human to do that role, but they know it would result in a better outcome, wouldn't it? If you go into a meeting and you know they can afford your service, they're in the right industry, you've got similar case studies, and you understand their personality, your close rate should go up. Everything. I'll stop talking now because I'm irritating myself. But can you see how it's like? It just in my head, it's playing out, and it's only prompted by we've gone through Grokbot to this point. And we're going to carry on, but it's starting to connect some things in my head where I'm like, and the speed of it. I don't think this isn't science fiction that we're talking about. Like in 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. This is launched in August 2026. And it's now accessible to anybody who will pay. And that's an important thing, is anybody who will pay. But as we get onto costs in a bit, compare it to the cost of a human. That's where this is just decimating markets and jobs. Because the other side of it is, okay, let's imagine nobody loses their job at all through AI. Let's imagine that doesn't happen in 2026. How many new roles get created? Like how many new employees get taken on? Does that make sense? If you compare it to the last 10 years, I
think that's the $1 million question. How many new people are getting taken on? I think that's probably, from what I'm hearing from the younger Gen Z is that it's very difficult at the moment to get any job.
But that's been the story for years, hasn't it? Decades. Like I remember coming out of uni and being told, there's 200 applicants for a job. I'd love to know what the stats are now, because businesses are recruiting. The room I was in yesterday, every single business is recruited this month. But what we didn't discuss was how many did we recruit 10 years ago in the past month. Does that make sense? Like, what do the volumes look like?
This is children saying to me, or kids saying to me, that there's 200 applicants for someone working at a coffee shop. Now that I don't remember that ever kind of being that volume. Do you? I mean that seems.
And also, I mean, totally, we've done this again in an episode. My head's jumping around today, but like, do you trust a CV? If you get a CV today, do you trust it?
Well, that's
because I would imagine if you've got 200 applicants for a job, you're getting 98% of them are AI generated CVs. Yeah. And there was a really interesting story yesterday where somebody, in a jokey way, but I could see it being real, was like they were talking about they were recruiting. And literally, the majority had said they'd worked in a church or worked in a hospice as voluntary work on their CV. So they deliberately made a point of saying, tell me more, and they couldn't answer it. So people were putting on their CVs, perhaps because they hadn't even read the AI-generated thing, and it was saying they'd worked for 6 months in a hospice. And then when actually asked about their work in the hospice, they couldn't elaborate.
Well, maybe that was where the watermarking comes in. I mean, I'm not sure how watermarking works when you...
watermarking is just watermarking, my understanding of it is it's just black and white. You can put something through. It won't tell you the source. It won't tell you who created it, how they created it. It will just simply be, is this AI generated, yes or no?
Well, absolutely.
So the CV, you could use a CV to draft your, I mean, we all struggle from writer's block. So you could create your first version of your CV in AI, and then you could edit it. And the question really is, at what point does the amount of editing become non-AI generated? And the argument is you'd have to basically rewrite it. So it's just a stamp. It's was this AI generated, yes or no?
Yeah, but that's probably where that's going to come into play. But let's bring it back in again. So if you're making this practical, just applications, one of the things we've tried, Paul, is giving it access to our code base into the GitHub. And it was immediately useful because it can do code-based archaeology without one of us manually feeding files into a chat window.
So use case one, okay, code-based orientation. You inherit a project or a client comes to you with a vibe-coded application, something that's happening every day now. Give the agent the repo, documentation, issue history, ask it to map the architecture, identify obvious security concerns, flag dead code, explain dependencies, and produce the questions a human developer should investigate next.
And use case 2, bug reproduction. Support receives a checkout, does not work on a mobile. When I use this voucher, a Grokbot could read this ticket, open staging, reproduce the steps in the browser, capture what happened, inspect the logs where it is accessed, and add a structured reproduction back to the development issue.
And I think that's a huge one, because half the time that, the expensive part is not fixing the bug. It's turning this doesn't work into a reliable set of steps that an engineer can act on and then prove that the issue is resolved, isn't it?
Absolutely. In use case 3, QA regression after release. have the test bot go through the critical flows, register, sign in, search, add to basket, commit to checkout, the account area, password reset, not replacing proper automated tests, but acting like a human tester on top of them.
We've got a client right now who's recruiting for that exact role. Use case 4 is support triage. So the bot reads new tickets that arrive. They check the accounts. They find related documentation. It identifies whether this is known. It drafts a reply, escalates anything involving refunds, security, or genuinely a new defect. And the human approves only the risky bits.
Yeah, and use case 5, sales. And these are use cases for like using Grokbot, by the way.
Yeah.
So sales and CRM hygiene. New inquiry arrives, research the company, check whether they're already in the CRM, pull out the useful requirements, create or update the opportunity, draft the first response, suggest the next action. And that is admin work every sales team says it absolutely hates to do. And of course, poor CRM data is normally the result.
Would you like a 6th use case, Sean?
Go on.
Project management, housekeeping. So, you read the open linear, Jira or Monday items. You find things with no owner, stale tickets, missing acceptance criteria or blockers that have been sitting for a week. Then prepare the daily stand-up summary before the team arrives.
Use case 7, release management. After code ships out, you collect, merge, pull requests, link tickets and known issues. You draft release notes, update the internal change log, notify the right people in the business and create follow-up tasks for anything deferred.
Use case 8, website and catalog work. So for e-commerce, I know that's your area of expertise, Sean, is it gets really interesting, doesn't it? Because you can have a bot collect product data from supplier portals, compare what's missing, classify products, prepare descriptions, identify bad images or inconsistent attributes, and then hand the clean data to the system of record. Again, it will keep a human approval step before publishing, thousands of changes. But you can see how it works at scale, can't you? That's the thing.
You can. And use case 9, research. So this is where Grokbot builds workflow systems, and it's worth mentioning. SpaceX AI has a built-in deep research workflow, like most of the models have, that they can fan a question out to parallel investigators, verify claims against sources, and return a cited report. That is not exactly the same product as Grokbot, but it shows where the platform is going. Not one model doing one long chain, but multiple workers splitting the problem and checking one another.
Yeah, and I think use case 10 is the one that probably I want to try the most, which is a mini delivery team. So it's exactly what you just said. One bot acts as a product manager in terms of briefing to acceptance criteria. One is then the developer. One is the tester. One is the reviewer or release manager. Give them a small contained project and see whether the handoffs actually work or whether we spent 45 minutes watching, 4 agents politely create chaos.
And just before sort of I finish off there, it's quite interesting when you're looking at these bots and obviously these tasks going on. When you want to sort of check on it, you're going to have to go through probably reels and reels of information, aren't you? I'm just wondering whether or not it'd be easier just to kind of do the voice or whatever in the future for these agents so that you can sort of sit in and sort of understand what they've been doing.
Well, that's providing they're communicating in a language we understand. So that's exactly happening. Is AI is developing its own way of communicating that's probably more efficient than the written language that we have. I mean, that was in AI 2027 is like, do we get to a point where we just want the outcome, don't we? So we go to the classic, we never wanted a computer. We never wanted software. We wanted the outcome that it gives us. So it's the hole in the wall, isn't it? I don't want the drill. And I think if you get to a point where you give it clear context and requirements and an outcome, and it goes off and 10 different agents work on a problem and come back with the outcome, the solution, if they didn't talk to each other in a way that we understand, because the recurring theme in AI 2027 is when we hit super intelligence, we won't understand what it's doing. Like there's a limit, and it was like it's only in my head because it was last Friday with the panel, but that was a fascinating thing of it.
That would make a brilliant show and tell episode because, like you're saying, the question is not can an agent write code, because obviously we're looking at about the software side.
Yeah,
we know it can. But the question is whether a group of persistent agents can coordinate, talk to each other, deliver on what you require it to do. And like you mentioned there, will we understand it? Or will we just say, we're happy with the outcome? You know, is it okay to say that's the outcome and that's fantastic? Or should we be making sure we understand what has been built?
And I think there's two parallels here. One is, again, last time I mentioned the panel review, but there was a whole debate about what happens when AI is supervised and when it's unsupervised, how it acted, and real evidence today of like it being deceptive. But then the second thing is, what can you say about a human when you have a new employee? Like, none of us want to micromanage anybody. So ultimately, we brief a task and we ask a new person who's never been in our company before to go and complete that task. You can decide whether you're going to sit over their shoulder and tell them every single step, or whether you're just going to then take the outcome. So the classic dilemma for the business owner is, and when they're in a certain headspace, is, oh, nobody can do it better than me, so they end up doing everything. I think as soon as you start building teams and you start delegating tasks, you gain speed, but you have to let go of control. You have your guardrails and your quality in, but if I gave you a task, Sean, and said, go and code this for me, I care about the outcome. Does that make sense? So it's like, yeah, I'm releasing an element of control. And I think everybody today is really untrustworthy, and rightfully so, of AI. But will it get to the point where we just delegate blindly because we get back a good enough? Because 9 times out of 10, when you give a team member a task, you want them to do it to the best of their ability, but there is an element of way better to deliver something good enough than never to deliver at all, isn't it? You know, like if you go for perfection, I wonder if AI is that thing where, but the issue people have is hallucination, but then all the steps to hallucination, all the model changes, you know, it's fascinating, isn't it? But even SpaceX, as you referenced, they're reviewing reports, they're citing reports, they're verifying it, but that work could have only been either not done or done by a human in the past. And we've now got this third entity that's capable of doing stuff at such scale that's why the fear is that the companies who don't engage with this will be left behind, because the people who are using it aren't just going to be a little bit ahead. They're going to be going at force like an army. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you have two identical companies and one uses AI and one doesn't, and let's just say with traditional businesses and they worked in a certain way, and then one gets into AI and the other doesn't, what you can guarantee is that one is going ahead and building an army. So, and I think, going back to your original example as well about, the personal accounts on a Monday morning, okay, downloading transactions we talked about, updating the spreadsheet, working out what's left for the month, check upcoming birthdays, great workflows, but you also just suggested letting it log into your bank account. And I think this is where we need to be much more careful, don't we?
We do. I agree. The official Grokbot doc actually says, for sites without a plugin, you sign in on the bot's browser yourself and the agent does not see your password. I mean, that is better than, I suppose, pasting your credentials into the chat. But once a browser session is authenticated, the agent is still operating inside a highly sensitive account.
Yeah. And for listeners, personal banking is not the place I would test whether this early beta computer use agent has good judgment. It's one thing for it to read a dashboard. It is another for it to, be one click away from a payment or a transfer or an account change. And again, you're given access to this tool. The website operator or service provider doesn't, they don't have probably terms that cover this.
Correct.
Like their whole thing is you are logging in and you are a human or things like this. And it's like, if you're not going for official API routes, it's really dodgy ground if it does go and do something, because you're never supposed to share your login credentials with anyone. No, and you haven't technically shared them, but you've provided access to a bot.
And as Paul said, do not let it loose on your bank account. A safe version is download, export the transactions yourself, drop the file into the agreed folder and let the bot categorize the spending that way. It can obviously update your spreadsheet, reconcile totals, write the weekly summary. You're still removing an hour boring work a week without giving a beta agent the keys to the vault.
And we do exactly the same right now with email. You know, we let it triage, we let it label, we let it draft and prepare. I don't let it send. I don't give it any unrestricted autonomous sending things until you've watched it enough to trust the boundary conditions. But cleaning up your 365 inbox and reducing those, large mailboxes that you might have is definitely something to explore. Yeah. And if Tim Winstanley did an article on this, in LinkedIn 2 weeks ago, where you get his AI prompts so you can test this. And by the way, you can do this in other tools, like we use Claude, and OpenClaw do this as well. Again, OpenClaw, I've never been comfortable giving it any real accounts. I set it up with new accounts and things like that.
Yeah, I did see that article from Tim actually whilst lying on the beach. Just
oh, here we go.
Just obviously browsing up and down on LinkedIn articles.
Drinking a cocktail.
Yeah, but we'll try and see if we can sort of get that in the show notes and just link that article. It'd be good for him as well. But of course, yes, the goal, of course, is graduated autonomy. First, it suggests and it acts with approval. Then maybe for a narrow, repetitive job that is approved safe, it acts by itself. But you earn trust with evidence rather than giving it CEO permissions on day one. So, what happened whilst I was on holiday? Well, that brings us back to a very good, difficult week, as I clearly didn't mention it enough. But what could a Grokbot team have been doing whilst I was at the pool?
Oh, do I have to answer this? I was like, yeah. Let me think. What could Grokbot do while Sean is sipping a pina colada?
So I could extend my holiday. I think we touched on this a bit. But.
Yeah, so I mean, it could have been producing your daily operations brief. It could have been reviewing support tickets that breached an SLA. New sales inquiries, failed scheduled jobs, deployments, unusual error spikes, overdue project tasks, and anything that actually required you rather than every other notification in the business. So, yeah, that's basically what it could be doing, Sean. While I picture you on the beach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can run a morning website health pass across client sites, check obvious front-end failures, broken forms on some websites.
That's a massive one. The amount of websites who have 404 links or broken forms and don't even know.
Microsoft, people, our listeners will probably know this. Microsoft, every year, will ask you to change your keys, your secret key, etc. So, and if you don't do it, it doesn't error. It just doesn't do anything. So you just don't get
stops working. Yeah,
you don't get an email. So things like that. But it can create a priority list for the support team and the development team as well.
I think the broken form thing's massive because there's an organisation I belong to, is just a member, called Entrepreneur Circle, and they have a real simple checklist called a leaky bucket, and it looks at your funnel, your prospect journey, your customer journey, and your websites, and it's just basic things like, have you checked every form works? And it's there's staggering amounts of business opportunity lost because a form that nobody bothered to test since the website went live doesn't actually work. And then your customers won't, your prospects won't tell you. If I go and use a web form and it doesn't submit it and I don't hear anything, I'm not going to bother to chase that company and go, I really, really want to work with you. So I think just your thing about Health Pass and things that have to be running across a business that are going to cost it through error, they can all be automated, can't they?
Okay.
And you're talking about, kind of that prospecting thing, it can monitor the CRM for new leads, can't it? New inbound leads. It can enrich them. It can draft replies. It can schedule follow-up tasks. So your entire prospect journey that you map out can be automated using something like Grokbot. So it can prepare proposals from an approved template, but stop before sending. It could turn completed development work into client-friendly progress updates.
Yeah, so it could do all the admin that tends to wait until that person gets back from the holiday. It could organise the inbox, summarise meetings, chase internal owners, prepare Monday's project review, update status reports. So when you return, you're making decisions rather than just spending the first day rebuilding context and trying to catch up.
So you're suggesting you could come back and have 0 emails?
Well, I'm suggesting that I could probably spend another week out on holiday. And as you rightly say, you know what it's like. When you do have that holiday, Paul, you spend 2 or 3 days just trying to catch up.
Yeah.
What would you do? You answer your emails. So like you say, we've already got that sorted out. So our emails are prioritized now. So that makes it a lot easier. All that spam is hopefully just removed. And if you've got like all these tasks prioritized and everyone's feeding the information correctly, I know exactly where I am. Yeah, still might need to have a quick meeting and stuff, but I always find it very stressful coming back, not going.
So I guess the ultimate thing that most business owners listening to this would want is a business that runs without them. Okay, that's the thing. And but ultimately, what do you want when you're on the beach, whether you're there for a day or a month or a year, is you want your business to be in a better position than when you left. You want it to run without you. And there's probably a lot of business owners who actually, when they go, they become a blocker. So the reality is they're either interrupted on holiday, which is what nobody wants, or they come back to a mountain of this needs your attention, this needs your attention. So the dream is not AI worked for me while I slept. The useful version is AI kept the low-level operating rhythm moving, and it's alerted me to the 5 most important things for me when I get back.
Yeah. I remember Paul McCartney, I can't remember his exact quote, but he said something along the lines of, the business I've made allows me to sleep and still generate money. And I love that. I think
Paul
that was
McCartney.
Yeah, Paul McCartney.
Oh, the singer.
Yeah, because obviously they wrote all this fantastic.
Oh, sorry.
Music.
Yeah. I was just thinking of songs. You're on about the revenue from the songs. Yeah.
So obviously, if AI can be generating, we're going to be talking about the price now. Of course, that's the sticky point about the whole thing. But we talk about the price now. But if you can get these agents to do tasks, and not only just improve productivity, but you can increase the sales side as well, then in a way, that's that kind of Paul McCartney opportunity is open to us, isn't it?
So we're saying be more Paul McCartney.
Yeah. Be more Paul McCartney. Obviously, we'd love to be able to have his talent, but I'm talking about in the AI opportunity.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Because as you rightly said, that first billionaire is probably not far away, being a single business owner with so many agents working around him.
I mean, to me, they would obviously, there'd be certain caveats, like they would obviously have to exist only in the digital space. They're not going to be a freight company. They're not going to be, They're not going to be doing anything. They're not going to be a landscaping company. But if they're entirely in the digital space, why can't it be done? And I think even if we think of that as like a complete, that'll never happen, there's definitely going to be £1 million company. Do you know what I mean?
You talk about not in the landscape business, but no, potentially not in the landscape business. But you could have a sales team behind the scenes when you go away in the evening, go back home on holiday mode.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm not saying any business can benefit from what we've talked about today, whether that's Grokbot or another tool. And I was saying that to somebody yesterday, is they were saying like, they believe they're one of the last businesses to be touched because they're in the physical domain, and it makes total sense. But then I just said, do you have finance? Do you do admin? Do you market your business? Do you sell your business? And they're like, yeah. So then it's like, well, it's the back office that people are overlooking. They go, I have a lawnmower, therefore I won't be touched by AI, or I'm a plumber, therefore I won't be touched by AI now. But actually, your competitors who embrace it in their back office will be far more efficient than you and will respond to queries quicker. And guess who gets the job? And it's all that sort of stuff. So I think AI still has an impact on traditional business, even if you're shifting boxes.
Absolutely. So now we've been very enthusiastic today about Grokbot, but let's put the brakes on first. The price, Paul mentioned it very earlier on. I think it's around £147 a month. I think you said maybe £220 a month. I mean, obviously it's still a beta version, so we still got to see this. So it's not cheap, guys.
I think the most important thing, it's not free.
No.
You can't go and try Grokbot. There's no, it's you've got to have either Grok Super Heavy, I believe, or a Cursor Premium, like you've just said. So you're looking, either way you slice and dice it, it's sort of $200 to $300, depending on your route in. There's no trial. So at the same time, you've got to realise, what is it giving you as an ROI? Like most people, Sean, if I said to you, Sean, you could pay me $200, okay, and then go on holiday, and when you come back, you've got a clear inbox and nothing to do except look at 3 important items, you bite somebody's hand off, wouldn't you?
Well, that's exactly what
so it's about the outcome.
Yeah.
It's not about the technology. So Grokbot's bundled into those plans that we've talked about, rather than, you can't buy it as a standalone agent. So there's a lot of people I still talk to who don't pay for AI. So for them, they would just look at it and go, $300, no chance. And it's the thinking is flawed, because it's, what could it get you? It could take you from being a £500,000 company to a 2 million. It's kind of the growth opportunity is huge. So you need to genuinely remove admin and not make it a novelty is the bottom line.
And interject here as well, because Paul and I, we don't really sort of try and sell ourselves in these podcasts, but if there's an opportunity where, as a business owner, you really want to get us in a meeting room to talk about potential opportunities that you feel that could help your business, this is where we can come in and help you. Because, as Paul says, you don't want to be throwing $300 away a month. But if it's taking away a chunk of something that could automate in your business and save you money or make you money, that's where it becomes extremely credible tool. But the second usage, the plans include weekly usage, and there can be additional usage costs. So early users already saying the allowance can disappear quickly when you run several agents heavily. Now, of course, we don't know how heavy those agents are. That's something that's a sticky point. But one Reddit business owner user said they burned about 42% of the weekly allowance on one single day. And that's anecdotal, not a benchmark, but it does tell you to watch the meter.
I think as well, like my experience of Grok, so I've used Grok for about 6 months, and I experience that weekly. So they have a weekly limit, whereas like Claude resets every 4 hours if you're on the individual plan. They've changed that on the team plan to be weekly, which is a lot more conservative.
Yeah.
Grok, constant. I've never survived a week and I think by Tuesday I'm out of Grok. And then you have to top it up with more credit. So my personal experience of Grok, it aligns exactly with that Reddit user. And it is a very expensive tool to use. But for what we use it for, it gives us so much capability. And that's not even using Grokbot. That's just using Grok. So it is very expensive. The third thing that people are worried about is obviously like reliability. You wouldn't upgrade Windows XP on day one, despite my former boss doing that and crashing his computer for about a month. So it's an early beta. We found users reporting slowness like cloud computers, browsers crashing, agents getting stuck, plugins not reliably pulling data, and triggers not firing. So other users are raving about it, but on the other hand, people are moaning about it. So both things can be true in a week-old product, can't they? So,
yeah. And fourth, browser and anti-bot friction. A cloud computer that's coming from a data center IP address. And of course, some websites do not like automated traffic from those ranges. Cloudflare, of course, and other bot protections can get in the way. So the pitch, it can use any website, even without an API, is directionally true, but not every website is going to cooperate.
And I think we find this a lot with Claude. You go and ask Claude to do something and it gets stuck in its sandbox and it can't access it. And I think as well, the inverse of this is if you have a website and you have an e-commerce store, for instance, your traffic theoretically is now going to go through the roof because agents are going to be hitting you. Does that make sense? So on the inverse, you may want to use this technology for your benefit, and then you might choose to go, well, actually, it'll have to declare itself as a user agent or something. So therefore, can I block it? So I think there might be a bit of a backlash where people lock down this type of technology because just knowing how hard it is to scale websites, you imagine the amount of hits it can do. Like a human can only click so much, can't we? We can only do so much. And not knowing the ins and outs of how this bot works, is it going to just go through what a human would do on a normal website in 10 minutes, in a second? Obviously the website won't catch up, but do you see what I'm getting at? It's like we will see the demand on resources of just standard websites that don't have APIs going through the roof. And then there's tech teams will be going, what on earth is happening? Our CPU, our RAM, our load has gone through the roof, and it'll be tangibly, it could be what looks like a DOS attack. You know, like how they've got around that will be really interesting seeing. Like I said, I don't have the information, but I'm just thinking through what you just said, because it's a real risk for some people is your websites could go down as a direct result of a bot using your service in a way that a human can't physically do.
We've had it happen, and I'm sure it's AI bots. We've had it happen a lot because what they're doing is they're either they're squirting lots of content into a search bar, or they're clicking on a certain form, and as you rightly say, it overloading it, and
that's it. It's overloading.
Yeah,
and I think as well, I'm probably flawed in my thinking there because you can't detect it from the user agent because it's just Chrome. Like, so if you give it access to a logged in, so let's just say everyone knows probably Zero. Zero has an API, but to use the Zero API, you have to pay £6 a month to create an application. That application then gives you access to their approved ways of editing, pulling data. Well, with this technology, what is to stop you logging into Zero, going to your reports, pulling down a profit and loss, and then doing something with it, or going and approving your transaction list? Nothing. Yeah. So they will lose revenue from API, potentially, depending on and if that was the only option to people. But also, surely, like overloading, they will see a huge increase of the amount of requests because it's teams of agents doing it. It's just an interesting thing to think through, isn't it? I'm looking at it one way, thinking about what the bot can do for me. You need to think about what the bot will do to you. And I think that the shared computer model is the fifth thing, isn't it? So, you know, your bots share the account computer. That means like browser sessions, files, logins need to be treated as shared resources. So if you want real separation between sensitive roles, you need proper account and permission design rather than just giving bots different names.
And of course, the sixth one is trust. I think it's a good one. My rule would be start with reversible work, research, drafts, QA, classification, summaries, data preparation, then move into low risk actions. We mentioned it before. Be very cautious with deleting data, financial actions, production changes, HR decisions, or anything sent externally in your name.
And definitely something we've touched on in the past is there's a deeper question about management and accountability. If a human employee makes a mistake, you can ask them why they made that decision, retrain them, change the process, and you can ultimately hold them accountable. With an agent, the explanation may be incomplete and the behavior may change after a model update. So we need like logs, approval, and a clear system of record as to what this bot is actually doing.
Which is why the best early use case is not replace a member of staff. It is remove the repetitive bits surrounding a member of staff. So the person can spend more time on judgment, client work, and problem solving.
So we've talked about Chinese companion humanoids. So here's the obvious crossover. Can you see, Sean, a physical robot in the office running this sort of agent platform? The software teammate suddenly becomes a literal teammate walking around the building.
And eventually, I think the answer is yes, but I would separate the concepts. Grokbot today is a software agent with a cloud computer. Humanoid robot needs a whole extra stack: vision, spatial awareness, motor control, safety systems, and real-time physical decision-making. You cannot just install Grokbot in a robot and call it done.
But the organizational idea that we talked about earlier does map perfectly to this, doesn't it? So give a physical robot a role, give it memory, access to computer systems and a set of routines, then let it coordinate with software agents. The warehouse robot asks the inventory bot what should be picked. The office robot asks the facilities bot which room needs setting up.
And that is when the language AI employee stops sounding metaphorical. The interesting thing about Grokbot is that it already gives the software a name, a job, a memory, a computer, and colleagues. The body is the bit still missing. So here's the challenge for us before the next update. We each identify the most annoying 20% of our working week, not the most impressive demo, but the generally repetitive work, and we'll see how much of it we can hand to Grokbot safely. Well, it won't be the next episode, but it may be in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, and we'll do it with rules. So we need to measure the time saved. We count how often we had to intervene. We track mistakes. We track usage cost. And we do not call something automated if we've spent longer babysitting the bot than doing the task ourselves.
And for me, I want to test the multi-agent software team approach. I think Paul wants to do that same thing as well. The product brief, develop a QA, have a tester, a review on a small contained project. I also want to see how far we can support the triage and code-based analysis, because those have a clear business value.
Yeah, I guess I want the boring admin gone. So the calendar, the follow-ups, the research, status summaries, all the little jobs that fracture the day. We are using AI for those things, but we're still intervening. So if an AI teammate cannot save me from boring work, I'm not interested in watching it like build a pretend company of 12 bots.
Yeah, and our takeaway is that the individual capability is not all brand new. Browser automation exists, agents exist, the RPA Paul mentioned existed, schedule workflows exist, multi-agent systems exist, of course. And what is exciting is the packaging, persistent computer routines, named agents, collaboration, and a much easier interface for giving them real work.
And I guess my takeaway is that the ease of using, increases both the opportunity and the risk. The easier it is to give an agent access to your real systems, the easier it is to give it too much access. So the winning businesses will not be the ones with the most bots. They'll be the ones that know exactly what each bot is allowed to do.
So is Grokbot the AI agent platform we've been waiting for? Well, it's too early to say, but it's one of the clearest glimpses of what the next interface to work might look like. Not one chatbot, but a small digital team that can actually use the tools.
So if today's episode earned it, share it with one person who's still manually copying data from one system to another every Friday afternoon.
And we'll be back with the results of the 20% challenge in the next couple of weeks. But until then, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or YouTube. And if you see Paul doing another solo episode again, assume I found another swimming pool.
Awesome. Cheers, Sean. Good to have you back.
Take care, mate.